Hello, welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's live stream. So this is a series of videos that I just now decided to do. Because I'm not very creative with my titles, I'm just calling it weekend reviews. Because it's a weekend review, get it? Well, the thing is, is that I have so many videos planned and so much planned to do in the next couple of months. I'm not going to have time to do videos and all the stuff that I want to do videos on. There's going to be a lot of shows coming out, particularly over the coming fall and winter, that I'm going to be watching, and I won't have time to review or do proper videos for, like Watchmen or Historic Materials and The Mandalorian and Rick and Morty, Bojack Horseman, and there's probably like even more that I'm forgetting about. So there's like so many, and those the Patreon supporters who support my channels, I send them my schedules of all the videos I have planned, and they will note that my schedule is jam-packed full, like all the way up until March. In fact, sometimes I have so many videos that I want to do. I'm doing like 4 videos a week. So because of that, I decided to do these weekly live streams where I can put the minimal amount of effort in and just come on real quick and just spurt out things off the top of my head of the shows I've been watching that week, hence the title Weekend Review. So all the shows that I don't have time to do proper reviews for, I can come in once a week, or any movie that I've seen or anything like that, and just really quickly talk about it and give my thoughts on it. Now, there's probably going to be some spoilers, so and I'm going to cover many topics in one video, so you might have to skip through if you don't want to be spoiled on certain things. So this week, I'm going to talk about the show called Undone, which I actually saw like a month ago, maybe over a month ago, but I haven't had a chance to talk about that yet, and I wanted to, so I'm going to talk about that. Talk about Bojack Horseman, Season 5, which I just, or Season 6, sorry, I'm missing a season. Which I just saw recently, really loved. And I want to talk about the first 2 episodes of The Watchmen, which I just watched last night. So, yeah, so let me start with Undone, which you haven't heard about it. It's an animated show released on Amazon Prime about a month or so ago, maybe 2 months or something like that. And it stars, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, Salazar as her last name. She was in Alita Battle Angel, and she was in, for Star Trek fans, you would recognize her. She was recently in that short trek about the Tribbles that I really didn't like. She played the captain. She's in this show, and it's an animated show, but you could also, it's mostly like a rotoscope, more than animated. So you get the impression that they did film this in live action with actual actors, but then they outlined it into animation, which you've seen. There's other movies that done this, like Waking Life and God, I want to, In a Scanner Darkly. I almost said In the Mirror Darkly, but that's the Enterprise episode. In the Scanner Darkly. So yeah, so it's that style of animation, and if you haven't seen the show, you hadn't heard this show, I would really highly recommend checking it out. I really enjoyed it because this was a really trippy, mind-bendy show. And it was I think there's like 8 episodes, and it was only like half an hour each for each episode. So I watched it all in one night. It was a quick watch. And I really enjoyed it. It has Bob Odenkirk playing the main character's dead father. Who, it's not really spoilers because they give this away in the trailers, but she's gets into a car accident and she starts having visions of her dead father, who says that he was murdered, and he says that she has the key to time travel. So the rest of the show is about him, like, sort of, her dead father appearing to her as a ghost, teaching her how to time travel. And so she doesn't like go back into like the 50s or anything like that, but she time travels like within the week of her life, and she constantly ends up And sometimes she travels into her distant past, but mostly it stays within the same sort of immediate time. And at first she can't control it, so she often like finds herself in weird situations and weird time periods where she doesn't really know what's going on. And I think the way this is animated and the way this is acted is really trippy, and I think it does really work for what they're doing. So if you know me, if you know my taste, I personally absolutely love these really like trippy, mind-bendy, where the rules of reality get spent and the characters are like kind of unsure of what is real and what isn't. That is really my thing, and I think this show does a really great job of actually pulling that off. Now, getting into some slight spoilers, nothing too heavy. I will say that was kind of heavy because I'm going to talk about the ending, but I'm not going to get into anything specific. But the way it ends, it kind of leaves off the view. It leaves it ambiguous to whether or not she was actually time traveling, or if she's just crazy and it's all in her head. And I didn't really mind this, but I like the show much better if I think that she's actually time traveling. In fact, the way that the show plays out, I think it's almost impossible. I think the perception or the theory that she's just crazy and it's all in her head, I think doesn't really work. And a lot of things don't make as much sense if you go that way. I think if you go by the way that she's actually time traveling and she has this weird power and there's like something weird involved, the whole thing that makes a lot more sense. And in that regard, it reminds me a lot of my favorite movie of all time, 12 Monkeys, which apparently the director, Terry Gilliam, said that in 12 Monkeys, he felt he wanted the ending to be ambiguous so it would be open-ended to whether or not he was actually time traveling or if he was crazy. But for me, I think it's extremely clear in that film that he was time traveling. There's no fucking possible way that's all in his head. I think a lot of things wouldn't make sense and wouldn't add up. So I just ignore that, ambiguous, and say it's not ambiguous at all. It's actually quite clear that he was time traveling. And I think I look at Undone, even though I think they kind of try to make it a bit more blatant that they're leaving it ambiguous, and they try to push the narrative that maybe she's just crazy a bit more than 12 Monkeys does, but I still come at it at the perspective where I'm just ignoring that and being like, no, she's actually time traveling. I don't care what anyone says. I still don't know if they're going to come up with a second season for that one. I really hope so. I think the character interaction, I think all the actors were absolutely amazing. And I think the character interactions, like the quippiness, I wouldn't call it a comedy. It is done by the producers of Bojack Horseman, which is really interesting. I can see a lot of similarities there. But I wouldn't really call it a comedy. I mean, there's kind of some comedic moments. The main character she does remind me a lot of the same character she played in the short track. She's maybe not. She's a bit more like self-destructive in this show, and she's really down on herself, but she's really quirky and quippy and constantly just making jokes out of everything. And I really like that character. I love those kind of quirky characters that I find really interesting, and I think they did a particularly good job in this show. So it's a huge recommend. I probably want to watch it again. I think it was one of the best shows I've seen all year, if I'm being fair. Now, okay, so now let me go ahead and move on to the next topic, which is BoJack Horseman, season 5 or 6. Why do I keep saying season 5? So this is the final season of BoJack Horseman, and it's being released in 2 parts, which kind of irritates me. I want it all now on Netflix. How dare you make me wait? So they dropped the first 8 episodes, and I think there's 8 more that's coming. And I have to wait till January. Thanks a lot to see the second half. And It's really interesting. I'm actually, after I watched this, I went back and started watching BoJack Horseman from the beginning because it's been a while since I've seen it. And it's funny because the watching the first and second seasons again in particular, it shows me how much the show has grown and changed because it was a lot. I mean, it's still a comedy. There's comedy still very heavy influence on the show even now, but it takes itself a lot more seriously. I think the first couple seasons were a bit more like over the top crazy wackiness would just happen, and some things that were less sort of character based and less realistic. Although they did have some character based stuff in the first couple seasons, don't get me wrong. I think they really upped their game in the later seasons, particularly season 5, which was my favorite season. And I think that's definitely the case with season 6. Now I will get into some spoilers for first half of season 6 if you haven't seen it. So it's interesting because, and this is something someone else pointed out to me in another video, that most seasons, particularly the first couple seasons of BoJack Horseman, shows that he's a very self-destructive, very he's self-destructive, and he sort of harms. He's kind of an asshole. He's not very empathetic or doesn't show empathy towards other people and ruins a lot of other people's lives. The ending of season 5 in particular was extremely harsh, with him like going absolutely crazy on the pills and choking his co-star, almost like seriously harming her, and then them having to hide it and cover it up, which I think is one of the best. Like, that episode blew me away. That was one of the best episodes. So what's interesting about season 6 is that it's like the first season where he's actually learning to be okay. He's learning to be okay with himself, and he's actually becoming a better person, like, for the first time. And it's like the first season where it's not really about how destructive he is to others, but it's about him re-examining his life and his life choices and becoming okay. And of course, towards the end of the half season, this is played ironically because all of the stuff that he's done to other people is that he's gotten away with so far looks like it's building up to come back and bite him on the ass after, which is pretty ironic because it's after he's sort of becoming a better person. So that's really interesting. I will say that I'm a bit afraid that the second... I know this is the final season of the show, and I don't want it to end the same way Seinfeld did, which is like with him getting arrested. And it does, a lot of people are speculating that it's building towards that the show is going to end with him getting arrested. And I suppose I could be okay with this. I just have the Seinfeld thing in my head, which I think that was an absolutely horrible way to end the show. And as much as you got to admit BoJack Horseman has ruined a lot of people's lives, I think in watching the earlier seasons, I am reminded of this, is that he's still a good person at heart. And part of the reason why he constantly harms other people is because of his low self-esteem and his need to self-harm. And it just he's just very careless because of that with his own behavior and how he affects other people. And it is a lot of it does have to do with drug and alcohol abuse as well. So this season's about him going into rehab and becoming sober and sort of learning to actually, deal with this. And what I love in this season in particular is you had that Dr. Champ, the horse who's looking after him in rehab, and how he becomes an alcoholic, and he blames Bojack for this, and he's like, I want you to know that you're a terrible person. I want you to know what you did to me. And Bojack later, he goes to Diane and is like, but that's, what he said is wrong. What he said is ridiculous. I'm not responsible for what other people do. And that's absolutely right, because I think that the Champ was completely in the wrong to put it all on Bojack. Bojack didn't force him to drink. Like, Bojack accidentally dropped a bottle of vodka, and tried to stop Champ from drinking it, but he didn't get there in time. And then after Champ did drink it, he tried to help him. He tried to get him to sober up in every way possible. He went out of his way to drive to the bar to try to get him to stop, but Champ refused. So I think Champ is just refusing to take responsibility for his own actions. And I look back on the show, and I think to a certain degree, and sometimes the degree is very small, there are other people who refuse to take responsibility for their own actions and putting it on Bojack. For example, this is way back in season 1, like the second episode of the whole show, which is rather silly, with Beale McNeil, the Navy SEAL, whatever his name is, and he went on TV and smeared Bojack because he had dibs on donuts or muffins that Bojack ate, and saying, oh, he hates the troop and he hates the military. Now, Bojack did kind of fumble and fuck up that situation, but I think at the heart of it, like, what the fuck does that mean, dibs? And why the hell is he making such a big deal? Like, he's the asshole there. Maybe Bojack didn't handle it in the best way ever, but I think a lot of things Bojack does to hurt people, in some cases, there's a degree of the other person has a bit of responsibility that they're not taking any responsibility for. And I think the huge exception, obviously, is with oh god, I'm blanking on her name, but in season 5, his co-star that he chokes, like, she was not responsible for that at all. And I think that is a really dark thing that he will have to deal with going forward. Now, I will say about the season, the first half of the season, like, I like the first couple episodes. I thought the season opened really strong, particularly with Bojack and Rehab. I think that opening scene we got with a flashback to Sarah Lynn's death was extremely powerful, and I love how her death is really coming back to haunting him, and it is a huge theme that they're playing throughout the season. And I like the next episode with Princess Carolyn and her raising the baby. I thought that was a really powerful depiction of how difficult it is to be a single mother. But after that, I think the show kind of goes downhill. I mean, not really. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's as strong as the first couple episodes, particularly with the one with Diane. I think that was okay. I didn't have any issues with it, but I don't think it was as strong as the first one. And the one with Todd going to, like, steal a kidney, like, I always said this, I never cared about Todd. I think Todd was definitely the weakest part of the show and always has been, and really, like, why is he still even there? Although I will say I thought it was cute how he was becoming a nanny for Princess Carolyn's baby. I did like that aspect of it, but we don't need an episode with him trying to reconcile with his stepfather and trying to break in again. And I just don't like the humor with him. I don't really find him that funny. But an episode Surprise, where Todd threw a surprise party at Mr. Peanut Butter's house for him, and Mr. Peanut Butter says he's cheated on his fiance, and they're all hiding in there. Like, that episode was very sitcom-ish. It was very sitcom-like, but it was still funny. Like, I couldn't help it. I think the humor in it, even though the situation seemed a bit over the top, dumb, and cliche, it was still funny. Like, the humor in it just really worked. And I love when Bojack, it does the meta humor so well. Like, it was aware of the type of episode it was doing. It was making fun of itself. like at the start, how before, when they're in the house getting ready for the surprise party, and this guy's like, oh, my name's Ted or whatever the hell his name was. I met Mr. Peanut Butter once at a gas station I worked at. And then when they're all hiding from him, and Mr. Peanut Butter is like yelling shit about it, his fiance's parents and all the people that just happen to be there, and they hear all the shit that he's saying about them. And he's like, don't even get me started on Ted, that guy I met at a gas station 2 years ago. What a jerk. Like, okay, that's hilarious. That type of humor. I think that was a really funny episode, and it was actually really interesting too. But the episode, which was the episode 7, it was the second to the last episode of the half season. Like, when I was watching it, especially when I saw the end, I was like, wow, this has to be the last episode of the half season, because this looks like a finale. But and it was quite a powerful episode that and this is the one that really showed that Bojack was becoming okay, and he wanted to be a acting professor and really turn over a new leaf. He stopped dyeing his hair, and he truly wanted to reach out to those he wronged, particularly the hairstylist. I can't remember her name. I'm very bad with names. But then you got another episode after that, which I was really surprised. And I didn't like this episode at first. I thought it felt gimmicky to me at first, but then I kind of realized what they were going for, that it was showing all of the actions, because Bojack was not in this episode at all. It just had a bunch of supporting characters we've seen before, but it was showing the negative actions and how all how these people's lives have been affected in a very negative way, while Bojack got off mainly scot-free, and how it's sort of, and then with the report, I, by the way, hated the reporters and how they acted like they're from like a 40s or 50s film. Like, that was a bit annoying. And they made references about how silly that was too. Like, they even had like a whole old-timey phone when they went to use the phone. I don't know, I didn't like those characters. They really annoyed me. But it was all leading up to, of course, they're uncovering what happened with Sarah Lynn and what happened in New Mexico, and this is all like building to come back and bite them on the ass. And I love the show, and I think the last couple seasons have been amazing, so I do have faith that they're going to handle this in a great way. But I don't know. I don't want a Seinfeld ending. I just don't. I think one possibility I heard I think might be good is that if he does go to jail, but that's not where the show ends, that they flash forward to when he gets out of jail and we see how he's been affected by it or whatever. Like, I think that might be interesting, but I don't want them to end with this ominous, like a trial, and is he going to jail? And then the final scene is him going to jail. I think that would be horrible. Personally, I hope that's not what they're leaning towards. And yeah, I don't know. I think they might do. I want to see them play off more of the fact that he has become a better person, but the consequences of the shit that he's done in the past is going to come back, and he's going to pay the consequences for that, even though he himself has improved. Anyway, I talked about this enough. Let me move over to The Watchmen. I watched the first 2 episodes of The Watchmen. I have not read the graphic novel, so I was a little lost on this. I've saw the movie, but to my knowledge, the show is not based off the movie at all. It's based off of the graphic novels, but more specifically. And if you haven't seen The Watchmen, it's a sequel. It's not a reboot or retelling of the graphic novel. It's taking place 30 years after it. So we kind of need to know what happened, but I went back and I've watched some YouTube videos, and I've read some things online about that kind of explains what you need to know to get this show. And I've seen the movie, so I had some context. I didn't like the movie, to be fair, because I'm not a fan of Zack Snyder. When I saw that movie, especially the open sequence, I was like, oh God, this is trying so hard to be gritty. It's like, oh, look at how gritty we are. And I talked about the show The Boys that came out over the summer on Amazon, and how I loved that, and how I thought that was actually much better than the Watchmen movie. It actually accomplished what the Watchmen movie was trying but failing to accomplish. But The show, I will say, I am really loving it. Now, I did kind of want to watch it because it's done by Damon Lindelof. He's a showrunner. Of course, he was a showrunner for Lost, which I loved, and The Leftovers, which was another really great show, arguably greater because it had actually a decent ending. And so I was really on board to see what he was going to do with it next. And he is taking it in a really different direction. And I don't really know. The only issue I would probably have with it, although this is just the first 2 episodes, maybe this is going to change later in the season, is that they shouldn't really call it The Watchmen, because it's not really about the Watchmen. It's just, it follows totally different characters set in a totally different part of the country, but it's set in the same universe as the Watchmen. So the consequences of what happened in the graphic novel with the giant squid and Dr. Manhattan and, Richard Nixon being the president in the 80s, and apparently Robert Redford became president after him. So stuff like that is set in it's set in the same universe. I don't know if I'd call it a sequel yet. I think because Jeremy Irons, I think I read somewhere, is playing Ozymandias. So he's one character who was in the comics. But I don't know. Maybe this will change and it will start to become more of a direct sequel later, but it seems more like a spinoff than the sequel to me. I think they should have titled it something else. I think they just kind of want to make it absolutely clear that, I don't know, it's not really, because Watchmen, if they call it The Watchmen, it seems like it would be a retelling of the graphic novel, but whatever. I actually love that it's going in a different direction, and it's really great acting. I'm really enthralled. Some of it's really strange and really weird. The second episode in particular, I'm kind of just want to see where they're going with this at this moment. It's one of the shows I wish I could binge watch, honestly. And the one thing I will definitely say about it is that I love the music. And as I was watching it, the first episode, I was like, wow, this music is pretty amazing. It sounds really like Nine Inch Nails like. And then I saw the credits and music done by Trent Reznor. I was like, okay, oh wow, that's why the music is so good. And I was watching the second episode with that in mind. I was like, wow, what this music is absolutely, like, I want to watch the show just for the music. I think it's so good. But the characters, and like, I like what's her face, Regina King, I want to say, who's in The Leftovers, who's playing the main character in this one. Like, when she puts on her superhero outfit and goes around and kicks ass, it's really badass. I think the action scenes and everything that's done in that regard and the political statements they're making is pretty interesting, talking about the racial tensions that exist in the South today, and exploring some of the history of how that might affect modern times. But of course, it's set in this fictional universe, which makes it even more interesting. So I'm really engaged. I'm not ready to call it a masterpiece yet. I'm just interested to see where they go for it. Although Lindelof is introducing a lot of mysteries and weird shit happening, which he better fucking explain. He's got a bad track record with that. Anyway, those are the things that I did see I wanted to talk about. I guess I'll just briefly say that, talk about something I am not going to see, and that is Terminator Dark Fate. I was tossing it up. I watched a couple spoiler-free reviews, and the Rotten Tomatoes overall rating is positive. I think it's like in the 80s. It was in the 70s for critics and the 80s for audience, and I was like, wow. Maybe this, and a lot of people, spoiler-free critics that I see, are saying, "Oh, this is better than any of the other Terminator sequels after Terminator 2." Now I'm just thinking to myself, that's not really high praise, is it? Though it's not really a big accomplishment. That's not a high bar to pass, is it? I don't think it is. And so but I was curious. I was maybe gonna go see it, but then I heard a spoiler from the start of the film, which I won't give away here, But that made me think, that sounds awful. And so I went ahead and I watched a couple of spoiler reviews that give away everything that happened in the movie. And I'm thinking to myself, I am so glad I did not see this. I'm never going to see this. It sounds like just as bad as Genesis. I almost want to see it just to see which one I think is worse. It sounds like it's almost, because there's aspects of Genesis that worked. It kind of just went off the rails when they made John Connor into a Terminator. Just the whole thing didn't make any fucking sense, and the time travel of it just too much. But from everything I hear, they trash and destroy rather than honor the things that happened in the two previous films. And they do that in order to almost have a reboot and start fresh. And this film, a lot of people compared it to The Force Awakens in the sense that it's just repeating the same formula of the first two films and offering nothing new. So I'm not going to go see it. I'm definitely not going to pay money to see this movie. I have no interest. Although I did see a trailer today for Dr. Sleep and watched a couple of reviews. If you don't know, Dr. Sleep is the sequel to The Shining. It's based off a book by Stephen King, which was the sequel to The Shining, although the movie is trying to be a sequel to both the book and the film, apparently. And it looks really good, and the reviews are really good. People I trust are saying this movie is really good. So I didn't want to see it before, but now I'm really excited to see it. So hopefully I get to see that next week, and I get to come back to tell you guys about it. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I won't promise a day that I'm going to come back and do these live streams. I'll just, because my work schedule is always in flux and the days I'm available is always different, so I'm not going to commit to a specific day. But I will try to come back at least once a week, probably for the next 3 or 4 months, because as I said, there's a lot of shit I'm going to be watching. I won't have time to do proper reviews for, so I'll just come in here, spill some of my thoughts, and I'll keep up to date on the Watchmen, and his Dark Materials are starting soon and stuff like that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.